A homeless man snatched breakfast from a street vendor's plate. Instead of scolding him, the vendor offered him a cup of hot soy milk. Wan, who sold breakfast at a small stall on the street, was eating leftover steamed buns and porridge after finishing her work with Gaofeng. Suddenly, a filthy, smelly homeless man rushed over, grabbed her breakfast, and wolfed it down. After finishing, he stared intently at her food cart, his eyes full of malice. Passers-by gathered around, gossiping and calling the homeless man a scoundrel pretending to be crazy to get free food, advising Wan to ignore him and chase him away so as not to disrupt her business. Wan, however, showed no disgust. Seeing his hungry appearance, she gently asked if he had enough to eat, then quickly filled a steamer with hot steamed buns, a bowl of hot porridge, and handed him a cup of hot soy milk. The homeless man wore tattered clothes, but on his wrist was a well-maintained old mechanical watch. He didn't look like an ordinary person who had been homeless for years. After filling his stomach, the homeless man reached out to Wan, indicating he wanted 100 yuan. Without thinking much, Wan rummaged through her coin box and pockets, finally managing to gather only 86 yuan, which she stuffed into his hand. The convenience store owner nearby, seeing this, quickly pulled Wan aside, saying that this man pretended to be crazy and begged for money in this area every day, and many people had been scammed by him. He warned her not to be so soft-hearted and suffer the loss. The onlookers also laughed, thinking Wan was too foolish to have been swindled by the homeless man. The homeless man, having made his money, turned and ran away quickly. As he ran, half of an old card with an exquisitely engraved pattern fell out of his pocket. Wan bent down, picked it up, and casually put it in her apron pocket. 3 days later, after closing her breakfast stall, Wan passed by an abandoned underground parking garage and vaguely heard loud shouting and cursing coming from inside. Her heart tightened, and she mustered her courage to rush in, only to see several burly men surrounding the homeless man, kicking and punching him, viciously demanding his account password. Without a second thought, Wan rushed forward to stop them, shouting that he should pay back the money he owed himself. She then took out all 4,000 yuan of her day's earnings, which she had planned to save. The burly men took the money and left, cursing. Wan helped the bruised homeless man to a nearby clinic to treat his wounds. After examining him, the doctor said the injuries were the result of long-term beatings and torture, not accidental. The homeless man suddenly broke down in tears, sobbing that he wasn't crazy at all, but had been framed and forced to live on the streets. Wan didn't ask about his past, simply leaving him 200 yuan for food before quietly leaving. The next day, the homeless man approached Wan's breakfast stall, stammering that he wanted to borrow her ID card. Passers-by warned Wan not to lend it to him, warning her it might be used for credit cards, loans, or other illegal activities, causing her a lot of trouble. Wan, however, didn't hesitate and took her ID card from her bag, handing it to him. The homeless man took a photo of the ID card and immediately returned it, solemnly promising to repay the kindness in the future before disappearing into the crowd. Everyone said Wan had been terribly scammed, losing both money and trust, but he didn't argue. He simply tied half of the old card with a red string and hung it on the breakfast stall cart. 2 weeks later, a group of debt collectors stormed into Wan's rented room, saying his brother was addicted to online gambling and owed 150,000 yuan in high-interest loans. They threatened to take everything in the house if he didn't repay within 3 days. When Juan was frantic, desperately trying to borrow money from relatives and friends, but everyone avoided him. No one was willing to lend a hand. Looking at his breakfast stall cart, his livelihood, he gritted his teeth and decided to sell it to pay off the debt. Just then, a strange phone call came in. It was the homeless man from before. Not wanting to burden him, Juan forced a calm expression, saying everything was fine and he hadn't encountered any difficulties. Half an hour later, a black luxury car pulled up in front of the rented apartment. The homeless man, already cleaned and dressed in a sharp suit, exuded a composed and aristocratic air. He got out of the car, walked up to Juan, and handed her a bank card, saying it contained 200,000 yuan, enough to pay off all his debts. Juan was stunned. Before she could even speak, he said he would contact her again and hurriedly left. A month later, Juan's breakfast stall was inexplicably shut down by the local market management station, and his 6,000 yuan deposit and management fee were confiscated. When he went to the station manager to argue, he was surrounded and intimidated by the manager's men, suffering greatly. That evening, the stranger called again, telling him to come to the station the next day, where his deposit and fees would be fully refunded, and the station manager would apologize in person. The next day, the regional manager personally arrived at the station, not only refunding the money in full and apologizing to Juan, but also firing the arrogant station manager on the spot. Only then did Juan realize that the person on the other end of the phone was the chairman of the local life services group. The market and stalls within the jurisdiction all fell under the group's control. Before Juan could even express her gratitude, the number became unreachable. Shortly after, the stall that had initially made things difficult for Juan was raided by relevant departments, uncovering tax evasion, merchant bullying, and other issues, facing closure. The stall owner's connections tried everything to influence the situation, but to no avail. Juan, seizing the opportune moment, dialed the number again. The other party quickly responded, assuring her to continue her stall without worry. Half a day later, the inspectors withdrew voluntarily, and the stall received a compliance rectification notice. Not only was it not shut down, but merchant management was standardized, improving the business environment for street vendors. 6 months later, a luxury car pulled up beside Juan's breakfast stall. A man, accompanied by a lawyer, approached and presented her with a property deed for a city apartment, with Juan listed as the owner. Juan quickly declined, saying it was just a small favor and she couldn't accept such a generous gift. The man explained that she was originally the group's chairman, but had been framed by the vice president and relatives, and after being taken into custody, she was forced to feign madness and wander the streets, waiting for an opportunity to turn the tables. The 86 yuan Juan gave her was the initial startup capital she received from a lawyer. By borrowing her ID card and testing her innocence, she was able to file an anonymous lawsuit and successfully regain control of the company. As he spoke, the man took out the other half of an old card, which, when pieced together with the half on Juan's stall, formed a complete family heirloom. It had fallen when she frantically fled years ago, and when Juan had unintentionally picked it up. The fact that her brother owed money to loan sharks was a trap set by the station manager and others to deliberately make things difficult for Juan. The man sincerely invited Juan to become the group's vice president, offering a high salary of 5 million yuan per year. Juan politely declined. She only wanted to run her breakfast stall and live a peaceful life. She only took back the original 86 yuan, returning all other gifts. A week later, when Juan received a donation certificate, someone had donated 1.5 million yuan in her name to rural children to build a canteen and dormitory. The man sent a message saying, "Since you didn't accept the gift, I will continue your goodwill for you." During the man's absence, he not only purged the company of traitors, but also gathered evidence of the station manager's gang's misdeeds, repaying Juan's timely help and completely eliminating any future threats. Treat others with kindness, and time will surely reward you with gentleness. Pass on this kindness, and let warmth continue to spread.